Now, some years ago, there was a learning that I got in the place of prayer, and it was God letting me understand the fact that in order to understand the things I needed to be doing in a season, especially when I make a change or a transition, it was critical for me to know who I am. And in being able to know who I am in a season, I must click or connect into who He is. So basically, the steps will be get to know Him more, and in knowing Him more, know myself more, and in knowing myself, I will automatically do. In other words, our doing is connected very much with our being. And sometimes when we come through a transition, our focus usually is, oh, what am I supposed to be doing in this season? What am I supposed to start? What am I supposed to stop? And we're not thinking much into who are we becoming in that time? Who have we become? Who are we taking on at that point in time? But let's go back a little bit into discovering who God is. And while I reflected on this recently, there are two ways that I kind of learned and discovered that we could connect to the nature of God. One is who He is as who we can be. Remember in Genesis, the Bible said that, we were made in God's image. That means that there are nature bits of God that we can take on, right? So when you understand God in a particular character or a nature of His, you can also begin to see yourself in that light. So for example, one thing we know very well, especially if you're someone who is in the creative space, and I think we're all creating at some point or the other in our lives, right? Especially when you're trying to express your gifts. You remember very much in that moment that God is a creator, and He created in 6 days, rested on the seventh. That means that you also have the ability to create. And so those times when you're feeling like, oh, I don't think I know what it takes to create, then you remember that God is creator. You remember that you are like Him. You can also create, and then you can get that motivation to start to create things again. All right. Now, the second way is seeing that nature of God and how that nature can show up for you. So one name of God that many of us are very familiar with, especially if you've been in the faith for a while, is Jehovah Jireh, and that is God being our provider. And so when you remember that He provides for us and He meets us at the points of our need, and He does it like timely, then even those times when you're trying to do things and you feel like you're not as resourced, you realize in that time that He is able to manifest that character on your behalf. So in His nature and in understanding who God is, you could see it as who you can be because you're made in His image, or you could see it as how He can work for you in that moment and display His person. But in knowing God, we know who we are, and in knowing who we are, we know what we can do. So are you at that point in your life where you are thinking, what am I supposed to be doing? You really, if you're a person of faith, need to dig deep into knowing more of who God is. Happy Sunday.